Last weekend, one reviewer had to face off against 7 men, but there was just one problem. He had forgotten his gun. Where could it be? He left it behind. At home.
How many men, you say?
Hey there guys, how are you? It's me, the Canadian movie buff, with a review of The Magnificent Seven. So The Magnificent Seven stars Chris Pratt, Denzel Washington, and Ethan Hawke, and it's a remake of the 1960s movie of the same name. What happens is that these bandits, this rich businessman is taking over this town and taking its exports with it, and so someone rides out to find Denzel Washington and say, hey, these guys are taking all of our stuff. Come kill them. And so that's the premise of the Magnificent Seven. He gathers up all these mighty warriors from across the frontier, and they go off to fight off this army. Now, first glance at this movie, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I know that Hollywood has been doing a lot of remakes lately, but this is a remake that they've actually done right. There's only two notable westerns from the past couple years, The Hateful Eight and Django Unchained, both of which were directed by Quentin Tarantino, and so it was nice for a change for a movie that wasn't directed by Quentin Tarantino, and also had a different approach and style to it. What I liked about this movie is that it had that old spaghetti western feel about it. It had a fun atmosphere, even though there was a lot of violence and danger ahead. Funny enough, this feels like a summer blockbuster that got pushed back into the fall just so it didn't have to deal with Civil War. I mean, it was a crowded summer after all, so it was a smart move for this movie to be released in the fall, even though it wasn't going to be released in the summer in the first place. And the main concern I had with this movie was a similar concern I had with Suicide Squad, that it would focus too much on the stars of the stars like Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington, and not enough on each member. But again, like in Suicide Squad, each member gets their own time in the spotlight. I didn't recognize him at first, but the frontiersman with the bushy beard, that's Wilson Fisk from Daredevil. Not only does each member get their time in the spotlight, but the chemistry between each of the actors is phenomenal. Funny enough, this reunites director Antoine Fuqua with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, who all worked together in Training Day. It kind of had that little reunion feeling between Denzel and Ethan when you were watching the movie. Even though it was a remake, it was pretty faithful to the thing it was being a remake of. Sure, they had some differences here and there, for obvious reasons, but all in all, it was fairly faithful, even though it doesn't really matter at this point, but I still have to give credit for them following true to the original movie, even though technically the original movie was another movie called Seven Samurai that was like 3 hours long. I haven't seen that one, so I can't really compare and contrast, but apparently that was the original concept to The Magnificent Seven. The cool thing was that each character was different. Like, Denzel Washington is a clear classic hero straight from the West. He goes by right and wrong, he stands up for others who can't defend themselves, and he's a righteous man altogether. Chris Pratt's character is totally different. He's a gambler, a drinker, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks about it. Ethan Hawke's character is someone from the army who is a trained sniper who is a legend among the West. And sticking in tune to one of the characters from the other movie, he is a bit of a coward. So that's what made it interesting. You had these dynamic characters coming together and seeing how they blended. Now, while I did have a lot of fun with this movie, there are some issues that I have to address. For starters, the villain was a little bit cliche and sometimes cartoony. I mean, guaranteed, it is supposed to be a throwback to the old Western, so I guess back then the villains were cartoonish and predictable and cliche and all that. The story had a bit of a sense of predictability to it. Like, if you've seen the original Magnificent Seven movie, you pretty much already know what's going to happen in this one. It doesn't make any difference, and they don't really change it too much. If you've seen any old Western movie, you could pretty much guess what's going to happen, because you know the bad guys are going to lose and the good guys are going to win, and you know that maybe one or two characters might not make it to the end, so there is that sense of predictability in there, and it kind of takes away from the fun a little bit. I'm guessing they had to do it with their storytelling since it's a throwback to the Westerns of old, although they aren't any really diehard fans of the original Magnificent Seven movie, so there was really no fans to take off or anything. It's not like the Ghostbusters remake or a Star Trek remake where you have to keep the fans happy to keep them quiet, so why didn't they just throw in a little twist here and there? As long as there were 7 people in the movie, they still could have called it the Magnificent Seven. So, The Magnificent Seven. It has its issues here and there, but it is an overall fun movie. It's totally worth checking out. The chemistry between each of the actors work perfectly. Each character gets some time in the spotlight. The action is pretty intense, especially for a PG-13 movie. And Antoine Fuqua is a fantastic director. You can tell that he can work really well with different actors. He worked well with Jake Gyllenhaal. He worked well with Chris Pratt in this. He worked well with Denzel Washington, both in Training Day and in this, and he also works well with Ethan Hawke too, so throw in Antoine, Denzel, and Ethan together, and also the other five too, and you got a pretty fantastic movie. I'm not sure if I could watch this movie multiple times, because it gets a little stale after that, but I will say that it is definitely worth checking out at least once in theaters, and if it's possible, go see it in IMAX. Alright, that's my review. What did you think about it? Have you seen The Magnificent Seven? Do you prefer the original or the new one? Or do you prefer the old classic, Seven Samurai? Leave your thoughts by commenting down below. And as always, this is the Canadian Movie Buff saying I hope you have a fantastic weekend at the movies. See ya!